Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Humor Attire seminar. This is actually the last seminar of 2021. I think it may be the last humor event of this year, in which case we're going to rejoin you all in March. But thank you very much to Joseph Oduro-Frimpong, who's today's guest on Attire. We're very happy to have Joseph here as director of the Center for African Popular Culture at Ashesi University. And Joseph is going to be talking about his collection of popular visual media works, including hand-painted film posters, wooden sculptures, barbershop and beauty salon signs, political cartoons, within the context of the draft paper that we distributed before the seminar, Disnobi Art, Reflections on Popular Media Art Exhibitions, Value and Class in Contemporary Urban Accra in Ghana. So Joseph is a media anthropologist and a humanities teacher, and he focuses on public media and culture, politics, society, and the arts. And he's published in journals such as Semiotica, Journal of African Cultural Studies, the International Journal of Communication, and the African Studies Review. And he's also an exhibition curator who's exhibited in Ghana, the UK, and South Africa. We're very happy to have Joseph here as our final speaker for the year. This will run as our seminars usually do, where for the first half, Joseph will be presenting his work, and then we'll switch to discussion with the participants. So thank you very much for being here with us and participating in our series. Please take it away.
Right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. So thank you very much, Ralph, and thanks very much, Divine. Thanks to Babaka and Amina for everything that you guys have done to make this presentation to be what it is, or what it's about to be right now. So as you guys know, I'm going to reflect on my exhibitions around popular media in Ghana, which began around 2012. So just to make sure that we're on the same page, I'm going to stick to the text, and then we'll come back to the discussion session where we can do things extemporaneously. Okay. So the literature on popular arts in Ghana points to significant research output on the subject. Yet my profound interest in attending exhibitions in Accra since 2012 reveals a near absence of such popular cultural art forms at these locations. And here I should quickly point out that my understanding of what popular media art forms is in sync with Karen Barber, Grace Musila, etc. Although I have not interviewed gallery owners regarding their motives on this matter, one can surmise at least a key reason. That is, most galleries in Accra, as elsewhere, are simultaneously commercial and elite locations where collectors and art enthusiasts meet to sample or purchase serious art or serious works. Thus, galleries, unless solidly committed to highlighting these works, do not, as a rule, showcase these visual art forms, which include barbershop signs, obituary posters, paintings of memes. Let me see if I can, this doesn't work. Memes featuring African personalities, Manu water paintings, and paintings of famous African musicians. An exception to the above is my creation of Gallery 1957's exhibition titled Almost True. The event featured the works of visual satirist Michael Soy of Kenya and Bright Akwe of Ghana. Another notable exception is Nwuke's foundation exhibition titled Sumo Himfeshika, which showcased Ghanaian hand-painted movie posters, barbershop signs, and beauty salon signs from my collections. Through my initial observations of this bias against exhibiting popular media artifacts in galleries in Accra, I activated my resolve to extend my teaching beyond the classroom by organizing non-commercial exhibitions sourced from my collections. Here, the goal was to sensitize audiences to such popular artifacts' cultural, intellectual, and pedagogical value. So what I want to do today is briefly detail some of the key motivations that propelled my different exhibitions from my collections, as well as from a loaned work from a wooden sculptor called Edem Yeboah. So before delving into the discussion, let me briefly deal with my overall curatorial approach, and second, two critical points about what propels my passion for collecting popular media artifacts. With very few exceptions that I'm aware of, where the motive for exhibitions is non-commercial, the standard modes of exhibiting other visual arts in Accra are profit motivated. My curatorial approach is different, as it is not for profit and instead geared towards educating varying publics in Ghana or in Accra. Regarding what fuels my collection practice, the first reason relates to my research and teaching around popular culture in Ghana. Here, I find that as a scholar in this area, it is imperative for my students and all others, including my academic colleagues and non-academic colleagues, to visually and physically engage with these artifacts firsthand, either within the university environment or in various exhibition spaces. Granted that some of these materials, such as vehicle inscriptions, death announcement posters, and shop signages, are easily visible in the public domain, I find it essential to have a central location where samples of these works can be stored and accessed. Within this mindset, I have complemented my physical collections with a public digital archive via my Instagram page, Ghanaian Popular Culture. Here, I create an archive photograph that I have taken and those that I source from other locations and duly credit. Another important motivation for my collection practice is to preserve these artifacts, as Ghana currently does not have a museum or gallery dedicated to these items. In doing so, and an end goal is indirectly to help stimulate a positive sensitivity towards these formats as vital national resources worth preserving within academia and the wider public. So when I began scouting for locations to showcase some of these collections, it was apparent that gallery owners were very enthusiastic about supporting me to stage these exhibitions, but could not do so because the works in my archives were not for sale. For example, in 2013, when I approached Artist Alliance through its famous founder, Professor Blady Glover, he was very interested in lending me his gallery space to exhibit my collection on the unique Ghanaian hand-painted movie posters. Professor Glover was, in spite of his enthusiasm, to lend me his space, he could not, because he did not have, his space did not have any endowment to support, such works that are not for sale. All previous exhibitions on the poster have been held either in Europe or in the United States. However, as a commercial gallery with no endowed fund to sponsor non-commercial shows such as mine, it was logical that I could not hold my event there. Thus, it was a great relief in 2014 and 2015 when Alliance Française in Accra agreed to sponsor my exhibitions. The sponsorship included a free gallery space as well as hosting audiences during the opening and closing nights. In my first exhibition at Alliance, which was on the 20th of March, 2014, I showcased the near-defunct practice of the hand-painted movie posters that were very prevalent from the late 1970s to the early 2000s. Local movie theater owners use these posters, which are recycled on flower sacks, to advertise Hollywood, Bollywood, and Hong Kong movies to Ghanaian audiences. In organizing this event, one goal was to allow audiences to experience this very local nature of the posters in their orientation and practice. The global format of this art form, just like hip life music, lies in how the artists involved in this practice utilized recycled flower bags, employed their creative, imaginative skills and talent to create a distinctly local Ghanaian visual art form. Another goal of the exhibition, which also strongly motivated my 2021 exhibition around the posters at Nibuke Foundation, was to forcefully repudiate a lingering negative projection of the posters as a type of deviant art that ostensibly is outside the zones of so-called recognized canon artworks. Recent examples of such positioning of the posters occur through such descriptors as gaudy, incredibly bizarre, over the top, doesn't leave morbid or disturbing, beautifully off-putting, or describing the posters as possessing a childlike innocence. Whether meant to exoticize the posters to boost sales in galleries in the US or Europe, such descriptors tap into long-standing racialized thinking that disaffirms, quote, the social reality, creativity, and intellectual acuity of the producers of this art form. A different stimulus for organizing exhibitions on other popular art forms, such as barbershop and beauty parlor signages, occurred at Alliance Française in 2015, titled Married But Not Available. And the aim was to create a positive aesthetic consciousness about these works. Such a goal aimed to situate the posters as not inferior to other artworks, and as a result should be considered equally important and valuable pieces of art. Although perhaps in non-Ghanaian context, such awareness might not be warranted, I believe such understanding is crucial in Ghana. The key rationale is that this mindset can nurture a healthy respect for popular visual artists involved in such projects and begin to engender Ghanaians to collect and possibly preserve these works for posterity. It is from this position that I continue to collect and exhibit on these art forms. A third incentive for showcasing popular artworks was to reinforce the vision that these works are of substantial intellectual value through the exhibition statement and discussion that I held at these events. Here, I highlight how, for example, political cartoons and other satirical works, like those produced by Bright Aqua, an example that we see here, through their dynamic feature of humorous critique, allow political researchers to grasp a more holistic picture of politics. As well, political cartoons as an informal discourse act as a sensing device that detects and allows us to apprehend certain ground realities associated with a country's current sociopolitical dispositions. I also signal how these works are key treasure sources for archiving aspects of Ghana's history and can be analyzed and help critically understand contemporary Ghanaian post-colonial culture. Finally, I highlight the scholarly relevance of such artifacts by noting their pedagogical value through their use in the classroom to clarify, challenge, and ground theoretical concepts, thereby contributing to efforts, for example, to democratize, or in contemporary parlance, to de-Westernize or decolonize contemporary university classrooms. Overall, in holding these popular media exhibitions, I am motivated by the urge to get audiences to begin to take these media formats and their creators seriously. Here, the aim is to nurture audiences' disposition toward these artists as intelligent and authentic creatives whose outputs are equally original. Mainly in conversations with academic colleagues and students who attend my exhibitions at my university, we discuss how these popular art forms ground relatively recent and nuanced discussions of what counts as creativity and what is authentic and inauthentic. So with regards to my exhibition around Edem Yeboah's piece, the one that I exhibit, let me see if I can find it here, depicts, a quotidian scene that one encounters in many urban centers in Ghana, where female hawkers converge either to relax or to wait for work. In this installation featuring Yeboah's work titled Kayaye, my goal was to initiate discussions around the entangled Akan philosophical notion and cultural practice of Nyansa ni Baako Fuotri, to where wisdom does not reside in a person's head or in one person's head. In other words, I wanted audiences to visually experience and discuss the idea of different abilities, or in Gardner's terms, varying bits of intelligence. This dynamic perspective of the mind acknowledges, quote, many different and discrete facets of cognition, acknowledging that people have different cognitive strengths and contrastive cognitive styles. In this pursuit, my exhibition statement omitted Yeboah's background information. This gap fostered discussions around where Yeboah schooled and trained. It was in revealing Yeboah's non-formal training which generated fascinating conversations about his unique talent. So in all, I have outlined some fundamental inclinations that structure my exhibitions around Ghanaian popular visual media. So to conclude, when we look at Ghana's history, well-respected hotel spaces were the key locales to experience and source essential artworks. However, within Ghana's Fourth Republic, especially in the last decade, one witnesses a blossoming of art galleries and other viewing spaces, especially in Accra. However, popular media works, such as the ones I have in my collection, are not visible within such spaces compared to other visual formats such as abstract painting, digital art, photography, and installation art. Given the above, my curatorial practice has aimed to correct what I consider a blind spot. Beyond this goal, my exhibition practice projects such artifacts as worthy of respect for their cultural significance and therefore preservation. Furthermore, my exhibitions have highlighted popular media artists as equally creative geniuses, and their works possess intellectual and pedagogical significance. In terms of my future goals, I aim to extend and intensify my practice by exhibiting in high schools and tertiary institutions in Ghana and anywhere on the continent. So for those of you who are listening, if you have gallery spaces or exhibition spaces, please just talk to me and then we can schedule some of these things. So here, the objective is to introduce students to these formats as sources of intellectual discussions and knowledge With regards to changes that I hope to witness within museums or galleries in Accra and other parts of Ghana, several ideas come to mind. One is for such museum or galleries to consciously seek out private collectors and convince them to showcase their works. Another is for museums and galleries in Ghana to offer their space or spaces for those collectors who are genuinely interested in showcasing their works for non-commercial gains. And this is where, I end. Thanks. Over to you, Ralph.
Thank you very much, Frimpong. Very interesting presentation. And as you know, I have my own stake in this area from working with street wire artists over the last several years, and I've encountered some of the same issues around representing and curating a vernacular street art, and how that challenges ideas in the art world, uncomfortableness around the relationship between vernacular forms and kitsch and tourist-oriented art, and what's authentic and inauthentic. For example, in my work, I deal with children's practices of making wire cars, which is where wire art begins in Southern Africa. And later on, adults make it sometimes for a commercial market, and then it takes different forms. So I think there's a really interesting tension around the idea of popular culture and the gallery, and what you're doing in part is taking popular art into the gallery. As you frame it, it's not taking it into any gallery. You're talking about the tension with commercial galleries and how you need to work with non-commercial galleries. But I still think there's an interesting tension around what it does to a work, or what it takes in order to bring these types of works into galleries, and how some artists who come from an untrained background get taken up into the art world and become very successful in the fine art world because of this, maybe the real intensity of the forms that they produce. And then does that then confer this kind of blessing on their work that now this work is fine art, or is it still popular culture and popular art that's being exhibited in a fine art institution? So there's this delicate dance that we play with, like almost like could be like seeking the blessing of the art world in validating the work versus maintaining the value of the work where it is, where it's found. And sometimes I've also noticed there's this framing of African popular production within the terms of avant-garde European art. So does something look like a Picasso or look like a Braque, like it's made of found objects? So is it a European avant-garde sensibility, or is it an African assemblage? So yeah, those are just some reflections on the material you've presented. We'll open up to questions and comments from the audience, but do you have any thoughts on the idea of this tension between the validation of the fine art establishment and the value of something where it is in its home, where it comes from?
Oh, sorry, I was a little bit distracted. What did you say?
I was just wondering if you had any reflection yourself on the idea of a tension between being taken up into the fine art establishment versus something being valued where it is, in a sense.
Yeah. So for me, and I don't know if this answers your question, I think that dichotomy between street art, right, and the fine art is still well, ingrained in people's minds. And I think, galleries being commercial spaces as they are, wants to perhaps ensure that this, line still exists so that they can, make profit. But at the same time, what also beats my mind is, yes, if you're interested in making profit, don't you also have this edge to, how should I even, to be adventurous, quote unquote, and bring some of these things into these spaces for people to perhaps, judge for themselves and, and buy. So for me, it's one of these things that I don't even know how to say. I don't have a grasp as to why this is happening. except to say that there seems to be an elitist intent, to continue to regard these things, these art forms as not the it, right? Or as not the them to be brought into these spaces. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was also interested when you're talking about profit and value, that one way that people half seriously and half jokingly say you can identify fine art is that it costs more, and that would definitely be the experience of street artists who are taken up into the fine art world, is that their artwork becomes a lot more valuable. They make a lot more money out of it. I'm thinking of someone like Sherry Samba, who's, who comes from that outsider art position, but because of the intensity of their work, that value is recognized, and then their work is in the New York Museum of Modern Art, and it sort of is elevated, canonized, into the establishment.
And I have had experiences with, some roadside artists where I've taken, Sherry Samba's work, and I said, look at these things. This person is drawing from everyday experiences. Is there any way you are interested in coming out with a concept, drawn from Ghanaian experiences? And they're like, you know what, this will not sell. So, so from the artist's perspective, I guess they're interested in what people will buy quick. And I can also understand them, I can understand these artists, they have to eat, for example, so they are not ready to gamble on something that, might potentially not sell.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I've had very similar experiences, and part of what I've done is to try and create almost like artist residencies for wire artists, so that they can be paid to experiment, because people can't take risks otherwise. I noticed that Asanda had their hand up, and I wondered if Asanda still has a question or a comment that they'd like to make.
Yeah. Thanks. Hi, Joseph. Thank you so much for that very interesting work, as usual. My questions are not as difficult as Ralph's question, because I think that dichotomy set out was very interesting. But mine's around this idea of authenticity that you're sort of alluding to, but you're not teasing out. And I'm wondering about what makes some of this authentically Ghanaian, if that's what you are sort of suggesting here. As opposed to, say, West African. Can we make such claims? And if we can, and if we are, what makes this artwork then typically Ghanaian? And on that, I'm interested in, rather than the similarities or what makes it, in addition rather to what makes it all Ghanaian, what are some of the distinctions or the ways in which what you see or what you find in Accra maybe differs from what you find, say, in a place like Cape Coast? Or are we seeing something that's quite similar across Ghana here? Hence, we're calling it Ghanaian art, street art. And then, just walking around downtown, whether Johannesburg, or I'll use Johannesburg as an example, or even Lagos, there's a lot of this art, right, that you find. But I'm wondering, are all the pieces artistic? Is it all art, or is there some that's not art? And what distinguishes, when you're talking from a popular art kind of perspective, what distinguishes what's real art in the sense of street or popular art world, and what's not really art, what's just maybe an advert, right, in the face of a shop or a face of a hair salon? So those are my three questions, but thank you very much. I always love your visuals. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope I'll be able to answer all the three. So what makes something, a piece of work, authentically Ghanaian? I don't think, strictly speaking, we can say something is authentically Ghanaian. But if those artworks draws from Ghanaian experiences, then I will hazard to say they might be in the zone or in the realm of authentic Ghanaian art. So for me, I think so long as that they draw from Ghanaian experiences, right? Things that one can say, this one, it's peculiar to Ghana, right? That for me might make me to say that artwork is authentically Ghanaian. But I don't think, when we go back to this notion of what's authentic, right? We know that authenticity is something that is constructed or can be constructed. So in that sense, there's no inherent, one cannot, take up a piece of artwork and say, this is authentically Ghanaian. And for me, I would hazard to say so only when, there are certain sensibilities in those pieces that one can, say draws from, Ghana. So that would be my response. In terms of what I consider as popular art, for me, it basically goes back to this definition that says that these are art forms that, emerges out of the backs of ordinary, people. Of course, with time, they can be co-opted. But I think the basic ingredient or the basic thing for me about these art forms is that they emerge out of the backs of, ordinary people without any government support. I wrote something Ghanaian, but which was your second point, and I can't remember what the question is. So if you can remind me, that would be great.
Do you want to go ahead, Asanda?
Sorry, remind you of my second question?
Yes, there was something about what is authentic, and there was something about popular art. There was a second one. I wrote it down.
Yeah, the second one was just around differences that you see, if any, between, say, a place like Accra and Cape Coast in this. Yeah. No.
I think they're all the same. The similarities are the same. I wouldn't be able to say, oh, this is Kumasi art, or this is Accra art, or this is Cape Coast art. If you take the barbershop signs, for example, there are no discernible differences at all, except perhaps there might be certain local stars. If you take the barbershop signs, for example, there might be certain local stars from Accra that might be depicted more in this particular region than, let's say, Cape Coast. But apart from that, I think one cannot discern any specific references or differences.
Thank you, Frimpong and Sanda.
Divine has a question up.
Yes, my question was partly
the first one on
partly linked to Asanda's question, to some of the questions which Asanda has posed, and it relates to the title, to you first starting by reflecting on the title, which you use as a framework, because I see the title as a framework since you start by grounding it in Karin Baba's work and also conceptions of what popular culture is, and this distinction between what is, because you also use the term elite and non-elite. So I was asking you to start by first reflecting why this title, and also because it looks like a conceptual frame that you're pushing through, and then the second, which is related to that, is from whose perspective? Who is saying? Now who did talk say this no be art? Now who they say this no be art? Now the people they say this no be art, or now the art critics they say this no be art. So
or the gallery owners.
Exactly. Or the gallery owners they talk say this no be art. So I think the question is just to perhaps take it deeper, and then also to reflect, and also how you're located within Ghana, how you're located within these debates about what is considered as art, because this discussion now around restitution and restoration also speaks to this. What does it mean to recognize in the context of decolonizing, to begin to recognize something as art, and to begin to repatriate it and restore it as art? And I think that you're pushing something. It would be great to reflect more on that. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, this no be the pidgin phrase, this no be ... is a negation phrase, and what it does is it indexes a product, an act, a practice, right, as not being part of a classification, a recognized classification, and by doing so it puts it in an inferior position. Now, I chose this phrase, kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way, to kind of index this silent marginalization of these particular art forms in the galleries that I have visited. So it's more of a tongue-in-cheek, a way to index the manner in which these galleries have silently but loudly projected these art forms as not as not art. So the way I use this term is more to kind of speak silently but loudly to these galleries, to kind of question perhaps their motives and actions as to why these artworks are not. And when I say these artworks, I have some of these in my office, why these artworks are not being shown there. So that's the manner in which I use this term. Divine, can you rephrase your second question for me regarding restitution and that?
I was saying that this relates to the question of restitution and restoration, because when we ask what is being restored and what's being restituted, especially given that this elite idea of art is something that is born out of a particular encounter and a particular historical moment. And what does it mean to emancipate through that idea? What does it mean to liberate through that idea? Because when one says that one is restituting this thing whose meaning is produced through a particular encounter that one has then taken seriously, and then what does it mean? That's why I was asking, this no be art, because I'm looking at the painting behind you, and is that art? And I recall one of my early visits to Europe. I had this culture shock because I was just flabbergasted by the way in which there were lots of naked bodies scattered all over the town, in terms of as statues or in galleries and other places. But this was art, and during I was studying in Basel with one of the biggest art exhibitions in the world, and everybody was so excited, and I was still struggling to understand what was artistic about this. So that's why I'm posing this question. What is it that what pushed you to pose that question? What kind of conceptual, and what are you indexing, and what does it mean then to talk about art in the context of restitution and restoration, and things that were taken out of a particular context but have to be brought back into a particular context? Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I was up in Zimbabwe, and at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe, they were hosting the International Conference of African Cultures, and the theme this year in November was Africa Speaks: Confronting Restitution and Repatriation of Artifacts, Human Remains, Objects and Archives from an African Perspective. And I believe the king of the Ashanti was there. I was talking to the curator of the gallery, so he'd come from Ghana to participate in that. So just on the theme of restitution. I don't know if I heard in Divine's earlier question the idea of, is Dis No Be Art the voice of gallery owners, or is that voice, by using pidgin, is it implying more of a voice from the street rather than the gallery owner? So yes, I don't know how that works culturally.
Within my experience, right, I think the absence of these art forms in these galleries, right, translates into what is in the title, right? So I use it in a way to, perhaps it's a clear articulation of what they are not saying, right? Because if they were saying that this is art, or this is a type of artworks, they would have been showcased in these areas. But consistently, at least since 2012 up to date, right, I've not seen any of these artworks. And we have some of these artists around who can who can, produce these works, because we know that there is this gallery in the US. It's called Deadly Prey, and you can check it on Instagram. Deadly Prey Gallery. They have artists that produce works for them to sell, right? They have people on the ground that go to the artists, commission these works, and it goes to the US for them to sell. So I'm like, why don't we have, such exhibitions here, right? So for me, the phrase index, not that it indexes, I'm using it in a way to say that this is what these gallery owners are saying.
Yeah. I'm going to come to Babacar shortly, who has his hand up there. I just wanted to make a quick comment that perhaps when you're talking about the street artists not wanting to take a risk by creating things that they don't know sell, perhaps even on the gallery owner level, there's this not taking a risk on exhibiting things that they're not sure that will sell. Yeah, there's probably maybe a mirroring of that profit motive. But yeah, my colleague Babacar, would you like to speak?
Yes, thanks, Ralph, and thanks, Joseph, for this interesting presentation. I think that I have a question and a comment that is related to what Divines was saying. I'm understanding this kind of arts in the context of decolonization. Here, when I hear you speak, I have, my mind discourses of subaltern studies, when, for example, or the idea of the empire writing back. So between the galleries that are the canon, that is a canon, for example, and maybe who might have a kind of Eurocentric understanding of what is a museum, what is a gallery. And on the other hand, the street artist and the street or social reality trying to push for recognition. So between those two poles, I think that the state has a role to play, because I saw a poster in your presentation, the Ghanaian president saying stop to, I think the president of China, right? Political cartoons having to play an important role in satirizing, the African state in the context of neo-colonial power, and in the case of China. I'm asking the question because in Senegal, we have Le Musée des Civilisations Noires, which is the biggest museum, beautifully constructed, magnificent, but it was funded by China. And what is interesting is China, I think, there are some Chinese artifacts that have been, that are now present in that very civilization, Musée des Civilisations Noires. So what is the role of the state? Because in Senegal, it is very controversial, but in the Ghanaian context, is the state really having something to do between, Eurocentric canon and the street wanting to push? So I would like you to comment on that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So within the Ghanaian context, the state has retreated, very much retreated, where, even up to date, the works of prominent Ghanaian artists whose work are selling, for a lot in Europe. We don't have even pieces of their works in a national gallery. To be honest, the National Gallery is a disgrace. The things there are, it's nothing to write home about. And the government is not interested in any of these discussions at all, right? So you mentioned that where you come from, yes, you have a gallery, yes, it's sponsored by China, right? In the Ghanaian context, no. There is a national museum, but it is nothing to write home about, totally nothing, right? So, in the absence of that, right, in the absence of the state, perhaps stepping in to promote the arts, if you can call it that way, you have a lot of galleries now, especially in the last decade, coming up and taking that role. But that role is not for preservation purposes. It's just for commercial purposes. Of course, places like Nubuke Foundation is interested in promoting the arts in ways that the nation, could have done or should have done. But Nubuke Foundation is funded by, it's not well funded, let's put it that way. So they are doing what they can. So to answer your question simply, the nation has retreated. I don't say it's not interested, but by its actions, we know that it's not interested at all.
Yeah.
And for the Ghanaians and the Ghanaians amongst us, please, you can also step in and share your views. But Vanessa has a question in the chat.
I was going to ask Vanessa if she'd like to ask it. Would you like to ask it verbally, Vanessa?
Not a problem, Ralph. I'm more than happy to do so. Yeah, so I guess I was just kind of asking for elaboration on the discussion that was ongoing with regards to what having, pop art, what that does to the space. Is the idea that it kind of brings the space to the people, or it kind of transforms what we mean by gallery, or the idea is to have the art being transformed by the space itself and not the other way around. And I'm just wondering, of course, if there's a possible third option, and if there is, what might that option be? So I guess in some ways I'm also reaching at asking kind of what Joseph imagines to be the future of pop art and art generally in Ghana.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So what my response is going to be based upon what a practice that has been ongoing and is by a gallery called the Ano Gallery. They have started mobile, they call it mobile museums and mobile galleries. And what they do is to, go to, let's say, a community with the type of artworks that they want to exhibit. And I find that to be the third alternative, right? Where if these formal spaces are not going to exhibit these things that perhaps are deemed as, beneath them, then I think one way to go, and if I had the funding, I think that's what I would do, is to invest in mobile museums and mobile gallery, where if it's from the street, then you take it to the street. And that's what I think the mobile gallery and the mobile museums, that is the goal. And that's the third option that I think should happen.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was wondering about a similar idea of perhaps something like a billboard being a great platform for reproducing street art. That would also be like the mobile gallery. I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, because I think it ties into some of the other comments I'm seeing, which is when you were talking about taking Sherry Samba's work to street artists in Ghana and saying, here's someone who's very successful at what they do because they translate their very particular vision and experience. And for those of you participating, Sherry Samba is an artist who painted murals as a street artist and then became very successful in the contemporary art scene because of their very unique energy to their work. The way that they didn't use just standard ways of representing things or copied other people's forms around them. They took their own approach and it made something unique. So I'm wondering, in reference to Divine's provocation in the chat of, in the context of decolonization, should we abandon the idea of art? I'm wondering what about using another word like energy and saying, what is this unique energy that we value when we look at things like the painted movie posters, or we look at Sherry Samba's work, and when you're going to street artists and saying, can you put some of that personal unique energy into your work and not only produce things which are standard forms that sell already and that people expect to see, and you're trying to kind of inject new energy into that scene.
Do you want me to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, I don't have a response.
No, okay. And then, sorry, this was my comment. Yeah.
But Girish,
yes, exactly. Yeah, Girish has a question.
Girish, can you please come in?
Yeah. Girish, would you like to comment?
So I'd agree to. Hi there.
Hi,
Hey, so my question is, maybe I'll just, I find that your work with Bright is also very, very interesting, especially since a lot of some of Bright's work, which was actually showcased, for example, in the Kempinski Hotel, I think 2018 or 2019, one of them was not shown or was removed because it was actually critical of Nana Akufo-Addo, the president of Ghana. He was like basically sparring or holding the boxing bag for the Nigerian president. And that piece was removed because it was critical of the current political party that was in power, or the one that was also critical of the Gandhi statue in the University of Legon. So that painting was also not shown at the Legon exhibition. So how does party politics in a way affect the ways in which these exhibition spaces are also navigated and mediated? I mean, in your opinion, what role does that play?
So I think the dynamics would have been different if it had been showcased at a place like, let's say, the Goethe Institute or even Alliance Française. But with a place like Kempinski, we know that Kempinski, or the rumor, not that we know, the rumor is that there is an MPP personality who has a huge stake in Kempinski, right? So from that perspective, it should have been counterintuitive or counterproductive for Kempinski to have allowed, the piece to be exhibited. So I think that, it's different spaces have different dynamics for exhibiting these things. I think that when you're dealing with, the foreign-based gallery, the foreign-funded galleries such as Goethe and Alliance Française, I mean, they are just showcasing these pieces. And my hunch is they would have, but with Kempinski, there was that added layer where you had, you had the layer of a member of the MPP rumored, to be part owner. So, there was this fine line that they had to walk. So on the side of the artist, I think that, they know that, free speech is guaranteed, unlike previous eras where, it was dangerous to criticize the government. The artists know that now they can do what they want, quote unquote. But it is rather the exhibition spaces who are, or some of these exhibition spaces who are very cautious because of, potential retribution that can come in the form of, perhaps shutting them down, using perhaps obscure laws, etc.
Thanks, Frimpong. I mean, so I know there are more questions, so I'll just part with a comment and I'll leave this. I just wanted to say that Bright actually, in response, in a way, actually made posters, and he posted them along the road, along the highway, as a response, because what is not in the galleries can go onto the streets in ways that. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you so much.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Girish.
So if the former spaces will not accept her, the street will accept me, basically.
Great. And I saw that Leteko was making a comment on the subject, and I don't know if Leteko would like to say anything further.
No. I was just making. Thank you, Ralph, for the chance. Sure. Hi, Joseph Oduro-Frimpong. Nice to see you after a long time.
I know, right?
Yes, and thank you for a lovely presentation. Yeah, you see, when you talk art and then you put Kempinski Hotel as part of the talk, my blood boils, because that place, it's not a good place for for Ghana people. When you are there, it's like you are in Europe somewhere and you've just entered through the back door and they say, okay, you sit there and you watch the art. So I really think you're coming up with something here, an alternative to what Kempinski Hotel and their gallery there, is doing. Because for me, it is just like a channel, of elite artists or artists who are in the process of being elitified, to go through, you know, and exhibit their art. So, but I guess also, I think you are also making the point really that this concept of art is not really as narrow as it may be made to be if it was to be looked at through particularly strictly Eurocentric kind of a view, because here it's art as a living thing. It's art as living archive. It's not art simply in that narrow sense of something to be appreciated for its beauty, but there is something more to this art, and that's what this popular art. And I do agree that it is popular art. And I would hazard to say also to agree with Ralph. I like that concept of energy, because for me, that beyond that additional thing, that is where the energy is, and it's the energy that can be traced back to how people are living, their experiences of culture, and how they're reflecting on it. So yeah, I think I'm in agreement that forget the Kempinski Hotel and its elite pretenses and all these other arrangements that are not really helping us, to understand really the complexity that we are of art that you are putting across here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Leteko.
Yeah.
Perhaps just a question. I'm drawing from the chat here, and to invite you to reflect a little bit on the impact of the digital realm. You've talked about having an Instagram account, for example, and also in the context of COVID. I mean, there's been a lot of work coming out over the last year about the digital realm in relationship to COVID restrictions and what it's engendered. When we have Meta, for example, on the global level, pushing the the idea of the metaverse as a space in which people can meet and share art. Do you have any reflections on that, building out from your Instagram project and perhaps other digital platforms?
Yeah, so with the Instagram page, I think it has what's the word I'm looking for? It has opened up avenues and reaching people that I would not otherwise have reached. So, for example, if I'm going to give talks, and I'm asked to, give samples of what I'm going to highlight, I'm like, okay, just take this address and go and see what is there. And people come sometimes even before the talk to kind of ask you questions, which the response that you give would not have come through the talk that we are going to give. So I find, these outlets to be very helpful and having more impact than the the exhibitions that I do.
Yeah. Great.
And I don't know
you.
if you have similar experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I've been interested in working in actual virtual reality spaces for hosting art, but there's a lot of potential in that. Apart from the clear fact that there's a lot of digital exclusion according to who has access to the technology to be able to do that.
True.
But my work is on the Dakar Biennale next year, the Dakar 2022, and I'm going to take a VR project there about Pan-Africanism in VR spaces. So yeah, the last year has really accelerated the uptake of digital art.
This is digital art. Who am I to set boundaries, Divine?
I think everything is art, so that's the starting point. It's like everything is art, including digital art.
So I'm going through this. I'm going through this revise and resubmit, and I got bored, and I did this right, and I put on my Facebook page. So it's more like, yeah, is this not art? It is art. I don't care the criteria that have been set.
Yes.
And who was that person that sets those criteria, etc. So
yeah, this will be art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Joseph Oduro-Frimpong. And we have a comment from Girish. Frimpong is an amazing artist himself. Great, yes.
I pretend.
A practitioner. Thank you very much. So thanks everyone for attending and participating in this seminar. Thanks very much, Joseph, for joining us and contributing your time and expertise, for being a great closing act for 2021. And yeah, we very much look forward to keeping in communication with you, and thanks for sharing with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I hope
Yeah.
to, come back again and again and again. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And thanks
Thank you
everyone
very
for
much.
coming.
Yeah, thanks to the whole Humor team. Thanks to Divine, Babacar, and to everyone else here is from the team. I think we're all looking forward to some celebrations in the coming weeks, and to refreshing ourselves. I think the whole world is looking forward to a bit of a break coming up. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ralph.
Cheers.
Yeah, and thank you, Ralph. I mean, Ralph, and also Babacar, you've done an amazing job all year long, and really, we appreciate the work you've done. So thank you.
Divine,
Thank you very
and
much, Divine.
now that we are doing shout outs, Ralph, thanks for your persistence. I have this apprehension about public speaking, so I was like, no, I'm not going to do this, and I kept silent, and you pursued, and